Next up, we have our Secretary of State, Gregg, who is also running for re-election.
I want to acknowledge all of the electeds in the room. We've got members of the General Assembly, Town Council, School Committee. Thank you for being here. And I'll reiterate what the Treasurer said. Cumberland was behind me when I launched my campaign as some guy that was only known in East Providence, and I appreciate that, and I'll never forget that. And the Treasurer mentioned that this is Financial Literacy Month. It's also Save Democracy Month, as are the other 11 months. I'm doing the best I can to do that. First, I want to talk about the Treasurer for a moment because, Mayor, I heard those same critiques of the Treasurer. And as a 32-year public school teacher retired, he is managing my pension, and I feel confident about that because he's a decent person, he's a smart guy, he cares about serving the public. So Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution of the United States says the states determine the time, place, and manner of elections. And that's why the Office of Secretary of State exists across the nation. And that's been challenged, as you know. And I never thought that I would be sued by the United States of America, but I have that framed in my office, the United States of America versus Gregg, and I'm proud to stand up for Rhode Islanders. I refuse to give the Trump administration, I say the Trump administration because it's not really a Department of Justice. We had a Department of Justice that was independent until now, from the time of Watergate until now. And we were sued because the Justice Department, under the President's demand, is that they want a national voter database that includes your Social Security numbers and your driver's license numbers. Now, Rhode Island law and federal law prevent me from handing over that information to the federal government. Plain and simple, it's why 5 Republican Secretaries of State have also refused that request. We are in court now. We expect Judge McElroy to make a decision on that case soon. We're hoping that it will be dismissed, as it has been in 3 other states. And the problem with a national voter database is that it allows the chief executive to put their finger on the scale, to put their thumb on the scale. It allows them to have information to attempt to manipulate elections. So anyone that should sit in this seat should be defending the Constitution of the United States first and foremost. We take an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States. And if you want to do some backlog history, you'll see that the founders feared just this, and that is why they empowered the states to manage elections. That's why only Congress is mentioned in both the Constitution and the Federalist Papers as the only interceder, and that should be, and I quote Alexander Hamilton, because why not, that should be a last resort. That should be a last resort. This is not a last resort. This is an attempt of a president of the United States who has become terribly unpopular trying to manipulate the next election. And so we're standing up against that, and we're countering that as well. We just filed suit through the Attorney General's office around the latest executive order that is also unconstitutional. So elections take up a lot of my time, and that's great, that's important. But I've spent a lot of time trying to improve the state's knowledge around the Constitution, around Rhode Island history, around how government works. And I've done that through the Rhode Island Civic Leadership Program, which is kind of a unique program in the country. It's been recognized nationally in a number of ways, but most recently on last July 4th in USA Today, which featured that program as one of the programs that was preserving and protecting American democracy. There are Cumberland High School students who are part of that program. There are 135 students from 55 high schools in the Rhode Island Civic Leadership Program who come to our office or go to PPAC and watch SUFs, or they go to the federal court, or they go to the district court, or they go to meet the leaders of the communities from which they come. They spend time learning about how to interact with government. And then there's an overarching theme to this program, and that is treating one another with respect through civil conversation, which these young people have not seen on the federal level in their lifetimes. And so we're trying to give them the tools so that they can communicate with one another even when they passionately disagree. There are 300 alum of this program now. As I mentioned, there's over 130 taking place right now. It's really a remarkable program, and we've had Cumberland High School students in each of our cohorts for the Rhode Island Civic Leadership Program. It is really remarkable. They get to ask the general officers questions for a half hour, unfiltered. Some of the questions have been very difficult, but the general officers, and I give them credit, they have answered every single question of these young people. Some of those questions are coming directly from the dinner table, answering questions that their parents, I'm sure, have. But I think this program will help in sifting through what has become a vitriolic process. American government and politics should not be this mean-spirited. It should be based on fact, foundation, constitution, and I think we're building that basis here with the Rhode Island Civic Leadership Program to the point where many of my colleagues, both Democrats and Republicans from across the country, have spoken to us about starting their own programs that do similar work. So we're really proud of that. The things that don't get noticed in the Secretary of State's office, our Business Services Division is our biggest division, and anybody that deals with the Business Services Division knows that they deal with a whole host of things around starting and maintaining a business, but also notary public. There's a whole host of things that the Business Services Division does. One of the things that I did when I entered office was I made sure everybody in that division was cross-trained. So now when you enter our offices at West River, you can be served within moments by anybody on the floor because they're all trained in each other's jobs. And it's worked out well for them and for us. We're upgrading the business services platform as we speak, a huge investment the state is making, and that should make some people nervous considering the platform upgrades that we have seen. But we're being really sensitive and intentional about how we're doing this and how we're rolling it out, and the idea that we're going to roll it out while the current system is still in place, so that we're able to backtrack if we have to. Now that won't come out until after the election, ironically, but that is something I've been working on since I took office. And then we're making a huge push to build the Rhode Island History Center and Archives. Rhode Island is the only state that does not have a purpose-built state archives owned by the state on state property, and we're the only state that does not have a history center or history museum associated with the state's history, and we have a rich story to tell. So the governor's budget this year includes a $45 million proposal that the voters will take up on the ballot to build the history center across from the State House, where we can display the most important artifacts the state has. And our most important artifacts are the country's most important artifacts. We have a copy of the Declaration of Independence, the Goddard copy. It's one of 9 in the world. It's hand-signed by John Hancock. I know they all are, but this one is actually his signature on top of the signatures that says a true copy. We have one of the existing copies of the Bill of Rights. Our copy is in better shape than the national copy. There were 12 originally. There were 14 originally. There are 12 now. It is remarkable to see a Bill of Rights that has 12 amendments, not 10. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of what you all own. You are all 1/1,000,000th owners of these documents. This is an economic opportunity for our state to bring in cultural tourism, historic tourism, and to offer Rhode Islanders and students an opportunity to learn about these documents in real time in their state. I visited Virginia at the United States Army Museum. It's a remarkable museum at Fort Belvoir. And they are hosting the 1st Rhode Island Regiment's flag. This flag was last flown in battle at Yorktown, the deciding battle of the American Revolution. Flown by the integrated regiment, the 1st Rhode Island Regiment. Black soldiers, indigenous soldiers, white soldiers fighting without ammunition on that last day of battle. They took Redoubt number 10 and Cornwallis surrendered. The British surrendered after the 1st Rhode Island Regiment captured that redoubt. That flag is being displayed as the primary object in this beautiful museum where people across the country and the world will see it during this semi-quincentennial year. It'll come back to us, and then it'll go right back to Massachusetts and be in storage. That should be displayed in Rhode Island for Rhode Islanders to be proud of, and also to have a conversation around an integrated regiment, because the United States military was not integrated again until 1947. So we have a great story to tell. We should be able to tell it. It's a really good investment for the state. When the bicentennial celebration happened in 1976, the General Assembly in Rhode Island allocated funds to build the Veterans Cemetery in Exeter. A great legacy project honoring, at that time, 200 years of American history. We are proposing that for this year, that we honor Rhode Island history and American history with a legacy investment in this Rhode Island History Center. It's something that's long overdue, and it's sad to say that we pay rent lease on our facility where all of our documents are kept, and that we have thousands of documents off-site at Iron Mountain. This is unacceptable. It needs to be handled now, and while it's not terribly popular among folks who are worried about bigger things like healthcare, the bridge, et cetera, it's something we have to do. And it's why I'm risking political capital to talk about this, because we really have no choice. Last but not least, we're really proud of the training program that we have initiated along with the Board of Elections to train new poll workers at a time where it's really difficult to get poll workers. There's a certification process that's now in place, and there's a process that the Board of Elections must follow that I put forward after the signature issue in the Congressional District 1 race, where there were false signatures, forged signatures on nomination papers. And we have put forward a solution to that issue in real time, so that when one of the local canvassing authorities sees something that they suspect, they contact the Board of Elections, and then the Board of Elections contacts, and this is by statute, contacts all of the local canvassing boards to let them know this is something you should be looking for, so that this does not turn into a ripple effect. It was used very well in the presidential preference primary, where one of the Republican candidates had the same issue, and it was solved within 24 hours. So we're proud of the things that don't make the headlines, but make our process around elections administration more effective. I'll stop right there, and I'll take any questions you might have, because I don't want to take up too much more time. Yes, sir.
Speaking of the elections, I don't know if you know, we're missing one Democrat and one Republican on the board of campuses here. So it seems to be a Rhode Island thing. I'm in collaboration with Shannon Connor.
Yeah.
Is there a process or a way of getting more or to keeping I guess, retention?
Yeah, that's truly a local issue, right?
Right.
You need to recruit some folks, and you need to recruit some folks who you know will do that job with fidelity.
I would follow, I'm sorry. The biggest problem seems to be the Open Meetings Act.
Not posting, you mean?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, so again, enforcement, we've got a couple of Attorney General candidates here tonight. The enforcement is there, but yes, it goes through our office. We determine whether or not there is a violation, and then we hand that over to the Attorney General's office. But the other issue is a big issue too. There are not full boards, and that's a problem. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
So let's say, hypothetically, we don't prevail in the case where we are obligated to turn over our voter records with your name and your social security number and your driver's license number. Is there a provision that people can be notified to opt out of that? Because you're not using my data for its intended use.
Yeah, this is the connection that we have between the Department of Motor Vehicles and the Department of State. The greatest responsibility we have is to maintain the voter registration rolls. First of all, there's a whole process that would happen after this. This would have to go through the appellate process and then make its way to the Supreme Court before any of that were to occur. There's some opportunity to write Rhode Island law a little more comprehensively to take care of that. The good news around Rhode Island's data is that you're a last 4-digit state. It's why we don't run our information through this alien verification system that you're reading about all of the time. It's useless with last 4 digits. Very helpful for us to determine who voters are, but not in a mass collection. It's a good question. I think the Rhode Island Voting Rights Act that our office is sponsoring, President Lawson and Whip Kazarian are the prime sponsors in both chambers. That deals a little bit with that and what might suppress the vote through elections processes. So that does have some protection in there that you would then challenge in the Superior Court in Rhode Island. I think this is going to be dismissed across the nation. I worry more about post-election shenanigans, for lack of a better word, where the president and his team decide to challenge elections and seize voting material and make it more difficult for newly elected representatives or senators to take their seats. That's my greater concern. Yes.
Kind of going along with the Board of Canvassers question, as a person who's been a poll worker in 2 states, in New Hampshire when I was in college and here, it's a long day. It's not exactly glamorous. You don't get paid a ton of money to do it. No one's doing it for the money. But what is a way, and there's a lot of misinformation about elections, and so people are hesitant to want to throw themselves into the fray of all this misinformation about elections. What are ways in your mind that we can combat that and incentivize people to want to be part of this process while also combating some of that misinformation?
Yeah, it's a great question, and thank you for that service. So one of the ways I talk about working at polling locations is it is a patriotic endeavor. The reward is you're contributing to your community, to your state, and to your country. And so we realized that this was a challenge. We've done, I think, 20 plus explaining elections in Rhode Island all across the state to full rooms, surprisingly, in the reddest of districts in Rhode Island and in the bluest of districts to explain and recruit folks to work at polling locations. And we've been on every college campus in the state, and we've recruited a great number of poll workers from our college campus visits, and the Rhode Island Civic Leadership Program has produced at least a half dozen folks who have worked the polls or are going to work the polls. So I think that's the best way. The compensation part is really hard because these are part of city and town budgets. And the money that they get from the state is usually restricted to security measures, et cetera.
I have one other
Yeah.
question. Just kind of going along also with kind of the lawsuit about turning over voter information and your information from the registry and all of that. I know, one thing I have a friend that's very concerned about is, and Rhode Island's a better place for this than a lot of other places, but voting rights for trans individuals whose driver's license may not necessarily match their physical appearance, or name, or things like that. Rhode Island does have a fair number of protections that, safeguard that right for those individuals. But looking at the federal landscape as it is now, what do you see as kind of the path to ensuring that those rights remain protected?
So those rights are included in the Rhode Island Voting Rights Act. And what the Voting Rights Act does is, as the Federal Voting Rights Act is being diminished through the courts and through inaction in Washington, it's very much like the Roe argument, right? We're going to codify this in the state of Rhode Island, so these protections exist in our state, and those protections for a voter whose ID may have changed, those protections are built into the Rhode Island Voting Rights Act, because you can't depend on the Secretary of State to do the outreach and the informational outreach that we've done since I've been in office. You don't know who the Secretary of State will be 10 years from now, so you want to embed that in state law, and that's part of this. So it's not a straight up codification, right? Because the Voting Rights Act was really about protected class voting rights, basically voter dilution. But this is a voter suppression, anti-voter suppression bill as well, and that issue is included.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
So I've recently been made aware that if you are a state worker, you are not allowed to be part of the board of canvassers on any towns or cities. As a former board of canvass member, I know how hard it is, just as it is to get poll workers. It's hard to get people to be in the positions of, it's not glamorous, like you said, it's not glamorous to make a lot of decisions that people are at you.
Yeah.
Do you know the rationale of why, so you could be a town councilor and work for the state, but you can't be on the board of canvassers and work for the state?
Yeah, I can only make an assumption. The assumption would be that many state workers have their positions based on a political connection. That's the only assumption I can make. I mean, that's something that could be changed through statute because it is discriminatory against someone who works for the state. That's my best guess as to why that exists, but I don't know the history behind it.
That would be nice.
Yeah, and that could be changed through statute. That's something we'll think about, yeah. Of course, I'll get accused of putting people in there to tip the scales on my behalf, yes. Yeah. Anyone else? Yes.
This is a depressing question, but given some of the more hysterical comments from the federal administration about elections, like having ICE workers at polling places and things like that, do you feel that that's a reality we might face, or that that's more for headlines? And are you doing anything to prepare for that so people feel safe from their own government when voting?
Yeah, I think the commentary around it is intentional to keep people from voting just in case that might be the reality. I think there's no doubt about that. Same with how the president talks about elections and election security. It's not based on any fact. We have addressed this. So Our poll captains will be aware of what to do if there is that situation, and we're ready through our legal preparation for injunctive relief in case that does happen. We are meeting with the Rhode Island State Police and local police who are going to be at polling places in some places about what Rhode Island law is, so that everybody at the polling location is aware. I mean, this is very clearly against federal law, very clearly. I mean, specified against federal law. So I think the injunctive relief will come, but the damage is already done once the headline gets out there. And that's really what this is about. It's what the lawsuits are about. It's sowing doubt. And the only way to overcome that is to turn out in huge numbers and make it impossible to question. But yeah, we've done everything we can do. And you know, if you're watching the nightly news or reading the New York Times, you know the Democracy Docket folks are on this, and we're part of that coalition with the Democratic Secretaries of State. So we're all ready. We've tabletopped all this, and we're hoping we don't have to use any of that. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.